What's the most genius 4D chess strategic move you've ever seen someone execute at work or in life? In my youth I posted at a bustling Dragon Ball Z message board. One year on April Fool's I was messaged by a particularly popular poster that he would like help pranking the board. A particularly tasteless joke. He was going to have his girlfriend post that he was involved in a car accident. To help sell the lie he wanted me to play devastated, and to attack anyone who dared imply such a thing could be a prank, as I would be the only one who knew the truth. But here's the rub. He told everyone, about 80 people, that the accident was fake and that each of us was the only person in on it. And he told each person to react in a particular way, designed to put them in conflict with other people he had told to act in a particular way. I was told to be devastated. Someone else was told to call bulls. Someone else was told to say they were glad he's hurt. Someone else was told to say they were donating money for his recovery, etc. He just sat back and watched the board eat itself. It was pretty funny. This is straight genius. This is a Ray post regarding a high school senior prank. We spread the word that we were all going to skip the last half of the day by leaving out the doors at the disused extreme ends of the school that they usually had difficulty monitoring. One of the NHS officers had a brother who was a fireman whose chief was a bit of a safety and regulation stickler. Sure enough, we get to school that day and the doors at the extreme ends of the building are chained shut. NHS guy calls his brother at lunch. This was prior to cell phones, so you had to wait to use a payphone, and reports a fire hazard. Locked fire exit doors. Result: fire chief himself shows up and orders the high school evacuated while he does a top to bottom inspection on the whole building. Adding insult to injury, a huge bunch of seniors took off during the evacuation. I'll never understand why school administrations try so hard to stop high school students from doing harmless pranks at the end of the school year. I would have just set up sprinklers outside those back doors. Maybe have an extra staff member to record who leaves if you need it for fire safety or something. One of my co-workers at a previous job hated our boss. Guy was a suck up to higher management, made our lives a living heck by not communicating actual requirements, etc. until it was too late. Then badmouthed designed to upper management and the customer. My co-worker did some digging and found an old copy of the guy's resume online, polished it up, and contacted a few recruiters. Boss got headhunted out of the company. We got a new boss who wasn't a gigantic butt, and everyone was happy. I don't know if I personally would consider it a smart move, but my boss has been having heart problems for a while. He has a quadruple bypass. He basically knew it was only a matter of time till his next heart attack. He told me he was gonna make dang sure it happened on company propriety when it came. Sure enough, a couple of weeks ago he punched in at 6 AM. He normally comes in around 9:30, 10 o'clock, and less than 20 minutes later he was in an ambulance. Haven't seen him since, but my buddy from HR says he's listed for workers' comp. Dang that company, demanding he show up at 6 AM and causing his heart conditions from the stress. Worked as a low-level shift manager of a truck stop restaurant for a couple of years. My higher-ups used to do monthly inspections for FMs and quarterly inspections from VPs to see if the facility was up to company standards. I used to have everything spotless prior to a visit except for something benign yet obvious thing left dirty. Like top of the buffet was a little dusty, was easy to tell with dark stained wood, or left ice build up in the freezer. I did this so upper management would be distracted by the small oversight I made and would less inclined to look harder of something to reprimand me on. Was a crappy corporation and were required to find something I had to improve upon on every inspection. My grandfather pulled this move in the 1960s. Not sure it's possible or even legal anymore, but it was back when business owners had personal relationships with their bankers. Gramps had commercial properties where he rented out office space to businesses. One of his tenants was failing and about to close shop, and owed him a bunch of rent to the tune of thousands of dollars. They cut him a check for the rent owed, but asked him to wait a week to deposit cash it. Gramps knew the company wouldn't be around in a week, and he'd never see his money if he waited. He took the check to the bank. They both used same bank, and tried to cash it. Sure enough, they didn't have enough to cover the check, and the teller told him she couldn't cash it because of insufficient funds. Gramps asked how much they were short, and the teller told him about $200. So Gramps took $200 out of his wallet, had her deposit it into their account, and then cashed his check for the thousands they owed him. The next day the owners called him furious and in disbelief that he got his check cashed, and cleaned them out at the same time. Instead of lasting another week, they were out of business that day, but Gramps got his money. I work as a teller and as far as I know anyone can deposit into anyone else's account. So as long as the check is legit then I don't see why you wouldn't be able to still do it. Maybe not totally genius, but close. I had a colleague who worked at a very large company who was on temporary promotion to quite a senior position. It was a position that he knew a number of other people in the company were interested in applying for, many of whom were far more qualified than him. The day eventually came when the management decided to fill the post permanently and to start the process by looking for recruits from within the company. He now faced the very real possibility that the well-paid job he'd been doing for about a year might be taken from him and handed to someone from another department. To get the recruitment process underway, the local management asked him to write the ad for the job, which would then appear in the internal job vacancies listings on the company intranet. My colleague saw his opportunity and seized it with both hands. Firstly, he changed the job title in a way that could be justified but made the vacancy unrecognizable to anyone skimming through the listings who was specifically looking for it. Secondly, he started the ad by focusing on some of the more obscure aspects of the job, making it sound almost like an entirely different kind of role. He only got to the core parts of the job that people might recognize after about 3 paragraphs. It worked brilliantly. No one else applied for the job because it was impossible to identify it from a quick read of the title and opening paragraphs. My colleague was duly appointed to it after a successful interview. Fricked up that they asked him to find his own replacement. I have been around a lot of manipulation and politicking at various workplaces. I can't stand it, so I don't delve into it. So suffice to say, probably the most genius stuff was happening around me and I failed to notice it. However, something I was particularly proud of was when compiling reports, spreadsheets, ad copy, etc. I always typed my name in the lower right hand corner but set the text color to white. No one sees it, it doesn't print. But when someone cow manager cow sends off your files as his own work to the higher ups, along goes your signature. It came up in a discussion once where they were debating his data with my own. He had apparently sent alternative ideas in an attempt to discredit my contributions and belittle my capabilities. In a one-on-one meeting, I had them highlight the bottom right corner of all the documents he had sent under his name. They all had my name in the corner. I was working for them 2 months later. Don't know the exact details, but I read a story once about a guy who bought a full fare first class ticket on an airline. He would go to the airport, hang out in the lounge to get free food drink, then go down to the desk and schedule his flight to the next day. Since it was the top tier first class rate, the airline rescheduled with no fee. Kept doing this for something like a year until the airline caught on and told him they wouldn't reschedule anymore. At this point he went to desk and got his 100% refund for the ticket, since that was also airline policy. I was forced to be acting manager for a company I was likely less and less. I had all the responsibility but not the pay, and I was having to help interview actual managers. I hired someone away from a company down the street, then applied there and got his job. That job was the perfect blend of a thing I was good at, paid well for, liked doing, and filled a need. Freaking genius. New guy in a fancy suit shows up in the office, and the company president says he's a consultant working for me. Give him whatever he needs. Guy works with us for months, going out to lunch with us all the time. We're all getting on great. Then one day we are in the company meeting when the president invites him up to the front of the room because he's my new boss, the VP of something or other. This guy steps out from the middle of our group like it's the big reveal on a TV show. He was undercover for the past couple months. He asked the president not to announce his title during that time so that he could investigate our department from the inside without us knowing. Thinks back to all the conversations at the bar. LOL rip, I am fricked. I used to work as a sub-teacher and was having a class of 4th graders. Crafty, manipulative little suckers, let me tell you. One kid absolutely had to sit in the front of the classroom. The reason for this is that he essentially controlled the other kids by giving them looks. If he was in the front you at least had to tell because he turned around for a second or two, gave a look, and some kid chucked his maths book across the classroom. Also, after having a few classes with these kids, one kid stayed in the classroom during the break and I asked her what was wrong. Apparently 2 boys in the class was mean to her and calling her names. So I told her I'd tell their original teacher and or the principal. I was only a sub after all and had no place disciplining kids. As I talked to one of the teachers about it I found out that the problem isn't the boys, it's 2 other girls in the class. See, these 2 girls would tell the boys to go bully this girl and be mean to her, not because they didn't like the girl, but because they wanted the boys to get told off and disciplined for whatever reason. The bullied girl was just a tool in their eyes. If I ever need a general to confuse and misdirect my enemies in conflict, I'd recruit a 9-year-old girl. 8 14-year-old girls are psychological terrorists. Source: camp counselor during college summers. I work as retail analyst consultant and have seen all the tricks in the book. My favorite involved 2 large US retailers and iPhones. This was a good few years ago, at peak iPhone hype levels. Store A got a very small allocation from Apple, Store B got a huge allocation, and flaunted the fact they had a huge amount of stock available compared to Store A. So Store A took advantage of this. They set the price for their limited supply of iPhones at a loss-leading price, a real bargain. But they didn't do this to be kind. Their new Store B had a price match policy, and as they had been very vocal around how much stock they had to honor it. Cost them millions of dollars. If we're going down we're taking you with us. I like it. A German hacker once hacked the source code for Half-Life 2, a video game developed by Valve Corporation, before it was released and Valve was in total panic mode. Gabe Newell, owner of Valve, however had a brilliant plan. He messaged the hacker's anonymous profile and told him that he was really impressed by his software genius and wanted to hire him for a new project. Gabon even sent flight tickets to Seattle to him and got a resume from him. Unfortunately for the hacker, Gabon passed his resume on to the FBI in checkmate. Except for the fact that it didn't work. He caught on and didn't go, but the German government got aware of the plan as well and apprehended him in Germany. Incidentally, it was my brother playing 2D chess against strangers online when we were little kids. He had an electronic chess board named Igor, and Igor was a mother. We could never beat him unless he was on the lowest setting, and we played a lot of chess as kids. Anyway, my little brother set Igor to the highest level of difficulty and started a game online. The opponent made a move, and my brother would make the same move against Igor. Igor would respond, and he'd copy Igor's move in the online game. He never lost a game with this method. This is why I don't play chess online. This kind of cheating is even easier now. I had a boss who was, I believe, mentally ill. She would just not show up for days on end. When we raised the concern with her boss after she blew through a bunch of important meetings, he told us that he was aware of her scheduling needs and we didn't need to be concerned. Boss comes in and tells us that she has a very serious but unnamed disease that requires her to take a bunch of time. Noting that most days she cannot physically get out of bed, let alone come into work. Problem was that, at her insistence, we were all Facebook friends with her as Facebook was her preferred method for contacting us out of the office. So while she was too sick to get out of bed, we couldn't help but notice that she was posting photos, videos, live streams of herself out and about and having the time of her life. So we gathered the screenshots and submit them to our company's anonymous tip line, basically saying she was defrauding the company disability and disability accommodation program. Because this involved an actual insurance program. Disability. They sent it to our company's special investigation unit and they put her under surveillance. During surveillance they learned 1. She was absolutely full of crap with regards to her insurance claim. 2. She was fricking her boss, the one who was covering for her. 3. She was fricking the doctor who was writing her out of work. Incidentally, his disciplinary action was how we found out as much as we did since it was public record. She got fired. He got fired. Doctor got suspended for a year but got 6 months of his suspension suspended provided he complete an ethics course on, I guess, not fricking patients and helping them commit fraud. We got a new boss's boss who promoted me shortly after arriving. Checkmate. B. Kinda seems like 1D checkers considering how well it worked out for her. I was chosen as the representative of my senior class in a Scrabble tournament. I was against this junior girl, who was the best player in the whole school. Now, I'm not exactly a pathetic player, but this girl was miles ahead in terms of Scrabble skills. It was a best out of 3 type of game and I have already won the first round simply due to sheer luck. Halfway through the second game, however, I figured that I won't be able to win the round as my score isn't even half of hers. So in order to invalidate the round, I purposely placed a wrong word on the board. I was graduating salutatorian of the whole senior class, so she really didn't think I'll get a word wrong, and let the whole game finished. Obviously, she won by a large margin. Lo and behold, one of the teachers came to check the game's progress and he noted the non-existent word as per rules of the game, and the girl's insistence that she can't accept the win given the situation. We redid the whole second round. The next second round ended in a tie, and by technicality, I actually won the whole tournament. This was probably the first strategic, albeit very manipulative, thing I have done in my life. Very clever, very unethical. I had a friend who essentially engineered his marriage to a very wealthy girl. Her parents are worth tens of millions. He is an extremely intelligent person, and in my personal opinion, a total sociopath. A lot of people don't see it, especially at first, but he's extremely manipulative and is always roundaboutly getting people to do things for him. Anyway, he was a struggling artist, and knows that this girl is loaded, so he just targeted her, and eventually married her. I knew him pretty well at the time, and it was clear that he really didn't give much of a crap about her. He then convinced her to move to Manhattan, away from her family, so that he could pursue his art career there. They moved into a huge apartment on the 20th floor of a high-rise, with an amazing balcony view. I always thought it was extra freaked up because his wife is very overweight, and I think he used that as leverage in getting what he wanted. I don't know if it exactly fits the question, but it was kinda genius, if totally evil. Sounds oddly like a Law and Order episode. Someone I know claims to have purposely left a pen cap leaning against a cash register drawer so that the next time their rival co-worker opened the drawer it would fall into the rail, obstructing it from closing. Leaving a register open is a big deal in retail, and apparently this had a domino effect, leading my acquaintance to be named manager head cashier. If I recall correctly, the cashier was on a last chance kind of thing and was one of 2 who could work weekends. So once they were fired, the other person who currently occupied the manager head cashier job was the other person who could work weekends, making the weekday job available, and by seniority and comparative responsibility my acquaintance was promoted. Can't verify this actually happened, but the planning was impressive for such a low stakes job. If mechanical difficulties were enough to get that person sacked, he was probably going to get the job anyways. A friend of mine started dating a girl when he was 19 and she was 18. They met at work and over time a romance developed. They were crazy about each other, but there was one problem. She was very religious and he was an atheist. One afternoon, a group of us were hanging out and someone asked her if it was hard between them with the religious stuff. She told them sometimes it is, but she wasn't worried. She said, "In 5 years we will be married, have a kid, and he will be going to church with me twice a week." Everyone laughed, especially because they had only been dating a couple of months at the time. Well, she wasn't completely on target. It took her 7 years and they were married, had a kid, and he had become hyper-religious. Putter game must be strong. I was playing Cluedo with a girl I was trying to impress and her friends. One of the guys in the friends group was her old crush. During one of my turn I realized that this guy, highly intelligent mother, is close to the guessing room. During my turn I decided to ask next person for the cards that I had on my hand. Of course no one had them, which would suggest that the place, weapon and murderer are in the bag and are solution to the game. He took the bait, went to the middle room and guessed all of the cards I had in my hand, effectively costing him the game. He was really surprised and couldn't fathom how that happened, and this is when I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Unless I had all the cards I had asked for." I know it's petty, but was enough to impress the girl at the time and I still recall it fondly. This is a tactic I always end up deploying, makes it far more fun than using genuine deduction. My girlfriend lives in Australia and I live in the US. We don't get to spend much time together because of the distance obviously, and because of the time difference and our schedules we get a limited, but fairly consistent, amount of time we can spend together online, which we normally spend Skyping while playing games. Last summer she was coming to spend about 5 weeks with me in the US and we were both insanely excited. About a week before, my family was getting together for an early dinner, which wasn't very common as we all live on our own. My father picked me up to take me to the restaurant and I walked in the door and saw her sitting with my mom and sister. I was absolutely speechless and couldn't even make a coherent thought. She had planned it out with my mom months in advance and I had no idea. She sent me pictures and only messaged me at certain times so that I wouldn't catch on while she was taking the 30-hour trip over here. I cannot explain the happiness I felt and the shock I was in. In about 4 months I'm moving to Australia to live with her and I've never been happier in my entire life. This is great. You guys are great. My wife told me to get the bath ready for my toddler. I knew it would take about 10 minutes for us to round him up so I put the tap on super lower pressure so the tub filled up super slowly. That's about as 4D chess as it gets people. When it's time for my 2-year-old to get in the bath, I tell him he isn't allowed in the bath. He comes running and happily gets in. This actually happened to me, and I don't know the actual truth of it, so this is an assumption. I was in a disciplinary hearing at a call center when I was about 20 years old for bashfully slagging off my manager. She was a dong. To my college over chat, I said that I would rather resign than get sacked. After the meeting she went to see HR and asked if I would still prefer to resign. I resigned. In hindsight, 14 years later, I don't think I was getting sacked and she bluffed me into resigning, which is fantastic gamesmanship, and even though she was a complete and utter bellend, I respect that. Had a similar thing happen to me years ago. I found out later on that the guy they replaced me with had no clue what he was doing and was extremely lazy as well. The woman who tricked me got let go a few weeks later. People let personal stuff get in the way of work way too often. Some number of years ago I was an independent commodities trader in a trading pit. Think trading places. But I also traded lots of stuff that weren't in that specific pit. I was very open about what I was trading and why. Everyone was very aware that I was making good money on these strategies. A number of people wanted to go along with me. So I opened a friends and family type account as is allowed and told the group of 20 of my competitors that they were all welcome to join me if they wanted. About half of them did. This required their going through lots of paperwork and depositing their money into these accounts that I had full authority over. A new dynamic emerged soon after. We were all in this together. Or at least half of us were. Everybody knew who was in and who wasn't. Here's the thing. In the pit we're all competitors. We actively try to tear each other's throats out on a daily basis. But who is going to frick with me now? Surely not the guys that have me managing their money, which was half of them. And the other half? Would they screw with me knowing that half the pit would have my back in almost any situation? It was accidental on my part. But no one would frick with me from that point forward. All of this was 100% legal, by the way. Well, I doubt it would be considered a 4D chess move. But that's still something that baffled me. I used to work in a middle school as a watcher, surveillant. My job was to look after the kids during recess, when a teacher was absent, during lunchtime, and to make sure they leave on time. In France, you can sometimes go out at 2 PM or at 5 PM, and every hour in between. So we were supposed to check their schedule and make sure they wouldn't leave while still having classes to attend. We had this one kid, M, who was a total mess. Kid was kinda fricked up and ended up being fired after throwing someone else's bag filled with heavy crap from the 3rd floor. Fortunately, he didn't hit anyone. The kid would never do what you told him. Get in line to eat, and he would run away to play. M, you still have your math lesson. Go back to class, and he would run away from school. Repeat. So we decided to use the most basic reverse psychology we could think of. Kid is trying to leave school but he still has 2 hours of class. Okay M, you can leave. It's not like I will run after you. Kid would go back to class. I don't want you to go eat. You'll make a mess of the lunchroom. Would make him get in line. I think we spent the last month making him do exactly as we wished this way. I don't usually have anything negative to say about kids, but this one was really strange. Fired refers to an employer removing someone from their employ, someone due to performance attitude reasons. You're looking for expelled. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.